Thank you very much for that nice introduction, Sean. And I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation with you all. And then we'll get started. One moment. Okay. Just give you a moment here to get situated and bring all those buttons back that Sean was talking about. Okay, very good. Well, welcome to you all. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for joining us here on this chilly Thursday afternoon. And as Sean mentioned, my name is Liz Zabik, and I am the Professional Development Coordinator at CCCOnline as of this August. And joining me and co-presenting is John Reagan, our Quality Assurance or Teaching Excellence Auditor, and also our Cultural Sciences Program Chair. We'll be talking today about changes to what was formerly known as our QA or Quality Assurance System. And in particular, we'll be focusing on aspects of what used to be called the QA form. Also, just as a reminder, this presentation is a repeat of the session of the same name that we presented in our September annual conference, our Connect conference. So welcome to those of you who were unable to make that session or unable to make the conference. And also, this will be recorded and archived on our website as well. And at the conference, there were quite a few questions about the subject matter, so I just would like to mention that I certainly welcome those questions. You can type those again in the Q&A box there, and if you have questions as we go, please feel free to speak up. If not, we will certainly have also some time at the end. Okay. So, just generally what we're talking about today. In the last year, CCCOnline has undergone some structural changes. We'll talk about that just a little bit, and the impact on the evaluation system, or AKA the old, what we used to call quality assurance system and program. What exactly is changing in this evaluation process? We'll talk about specifically about the pilot form that we're actually running right now. And we will also, toward the end of the presentation, touch on tips and best practices in light of all this. Again, I'd like to emphasize that certainly at any time your questions are welcome. Okay, so this is a statement, our mission statement. This is the Center for Academic Excellence at CCCOnline. So as you can see, the word quality is prominent in our mission. And one of our projects is working on creating a program and sustaining a program for assessment of student learning outcomes and student success. And that's just one thing we do. Another one of our programs is, of course, the Teaching Excellence Initiative, and that's just to note that this is a name change from the Quality Assurance Program. And we also have, under the CAE umbrella, we have our Professional Development Program. I believe it used to be called Professional Training and Professional Development. So we continue with that, and we also are an umbrella over our library and the Quality Matters Program. So just to orient you about, that's really the structural change at CCCOnline. QA used to be under our academic instruction team. So just a bit about that. And this is a visual aid of our website. So if you go to ccconline.org, you will see that the Center for Academic Excellence is prominent on the bar at the top there. And I'd like to also point out that if you drill down and you go and read these links, you will see that our website our website does still show our quality assurance rubric and information with which I'm sure most of you are familiar. And that information, I don't consider that to be wrong, because if you're following these guidelines, you will be meeting or exceeding the expectations in your class, particularly in the discussion area. So that's not changing. Right now, we really can't change the website because, again, right now our TE form is still a pilot this fall. So again, the information on our website, I think it's valid, and I wouldn't say it's not accurate, but we can't change it yet to what we're talking about today, just because we're still in the pilot stages. So again, just to recap here briefly, what happened to QA or quality assurance? Well, again, it used to be under the academic instruction team. Now it's under the CAE umbrella. So new department, a new name, but I think the same basic goals, certainly the same spirit of eventually, you know, our goal is, of course, to offer a quality experience to all the students. And so we have the same basic goals, and we're just using a different form. And as we'll address here in just a moment, the form includes much that is familiar, but it does include some additional material. And so with that, I would like to hand the microphone over to John Reagan, and he will be covering the next slides for us.
And I'm just checking first to be sure that my microphone is working for everyone. Hopefully it is.
I can hear you well.
Okay. Very good. For years, the quality assurance program at CCCOnline looked only at an instructor's performance in the discussions. That was the only formal evaluation of instructor performance that took place. But we all know that there are other areas of an instructor's performance that are important too. Things such as substantive grading feedback, grading timely, those types of things. And so on the right side of this slide where it says change, the new teaching excellence form that has been developed that is replacing the old quality assurance form has more details, more categories of instructor performance to meet that concern that many people had for a long time, that the discussions alone, while a very critical element of instructor presence and engagement in a course, were not the only important performance factors to review for an instructor. And so the new, what's called TE form that is being piloted this semester contains these other categories beyond just discussion performance. And also, as you see below new details on form, there will be much more specific feedback from chairs. The whole process of evaluating an instructor and mentoring and encouraging them will be done much more extensively now by the instructor's direct chair. On the left side of the screen where it says no change, like Liz was touching on a few minutes ago, the same kind of policies and expectations that are found in the instructor handbook are goals that all instructors can strive to meet and achieve a good evaluation and review. Things like, I want to think of some specific examples, like how in discussions it's important to be active and present on at least 3 different days of the week, with 4 to 5 different days being even better. Just an example of how the same policies that you see in the instructor handbook are things that chairs will be looking at when doing these new evaluations under the new TE process. The evaluation path is the same as it's always been. In the past, with the QA process, the QA team would provide information to the chairs, and then that QA review would be released, and the chair could use that QA review in working with the instructor to let them know, here's how things went in the past year, you're solid in all categories, or you had good performance in most categories, but there are one or two that need some attention. So it's the same evaluation path. Some information is being provided to the chairs, but now they're doing much more review of the instructor's work in the course than they used to because of the addition of those categories like substantive grading feedback or timely grading turnaround within 7 days, that type of thing. Here's that old QA form that we're talking about. And this is what the QA team in the past would be looking at when they visited the instructor's course to determine how that instructor was doing in the discussions. And this shows you how certain categories of performance were deemed to be important by CCCOnline, and then there was an explanation of why that category of performance was even being rated, and even some examples for ways that a chair could coach or help an instructor who maybe was good in several categories but needed some help in one particular category or two. And ratings were given of best, good, and needs improvement. This new revised process, now that I've been working with it for a few weeks now and passing along these new TE forms to department chairs, I can see really will give more opportunity for more substantive, meaningful dialogue between the chair and the instructor, because now the chair is doing deeper review of an instructor's performance in a course, and will have more details and information to discuss with the instructor beyond just saying, here's a rating of how you did in discussions. And so the chair role in the instructor evaluation process definitely is increasing with the new TE process. And the QA team, now called the TE team, their role is decreasing. The TE team is filling in some very basic information on a TE spreadsheet for each instructor, and then the TE team sends that on to the instructor's chair. And the instructor then goes from there doing much more thorough review of the instructor's performance beyond just discussions. Here are the things that you see that are examples of what's being evaluated inside an instructor's course. When the chairs are doing these new reviews, of course, they'll look at discussions and whether the instructor is doing the kinds of things in discussions that CCCOnline has always asked for in the instructor handbook, things like active presence, engaging students, including everyone in the class in some discussion postings. Also evaluated inside the course by the chair will be the grading process. Is it timely? Is it within 7 days of the assignment date? And that is something I should repeat. It's within 7 days of the assignment date. So if the assignment date is November 1, but a student gets excited and submits their work in the Dropbox many days before November 1, this 7-day measure is still going to go from November 1, not from the day the student submitted the work in the Dropbox early. And announcements, that is another category that the chair will be looking at when doing these new TE evaluations. The literature in higher ed regarding the major concerns of online students continues to indicate that a top concern for online students remains active presence by the instructor. And so that obviously can be achieved by active presence in the discussions, but also by posting at least one announcement per week, adding information to the topic that's being studied that week, or an update on upcoming deadlines, or whatever the announcement might be. But at least once a week is another tool for reassuring the student, so to speak, of active instructor presence in the course. And this is the topic we've been mentioning, that even though there's a new TE form and that it has been broadened out from just discussions, the same kind of instructor presence and activity in a course is expected that's been in the handbook forever. Being present in the course at least 5 days a week. That means going in, checking around if there's anything that needs attention, answering student email within 24 hours, monitoring and responding in discussions within 24 hours. That simply means that while you do not have to directly one-on-one make responses to every student in every discussion, if there are student posts that you feel you do want to respond to, maybe a student has said something that is brilliant and a great idea, or maybe they're way off track, or whatever the reason might be, if you want to respond to a certain student, that ought to be done within 24 hours of their post. And then the grading that we've talked about, having a turnaround time on grading within 7 days of the deadline for the assignment. And certainly your individual chair may add to these things, and he or she would need to make that clear to all the instructors in their department if they have additional requirements along with these.
Thank you, John. I'm going to go ahead and pick up with the presentation, and again, feel free to interrupt us at any time if you do have questions. So we've been talking about so far what's inside the course and the TE form evaluating what the chair can see, what the TE team can see inside the course. This is just a little visual to show you that the new TE form is including a few elements that are outside the course as well. Now the first 4 boxes there, the brown boxes, are pretty much the same categories, slightly different wording, but the same categories that we've been checking for years with the QA process, and that is instructor presence, instructor guidance, acknowledgement and encouragement of the students. So again, as John mentioned, we've looked traditionally at the discussions in particular. And so we would, for example, look at the post in a certain module, and we would see okay, there's a lot of acknowledgement of the students learning. There's re-engagement. The instructor is asking additional questions and providing guidance, correcting students when perhaps they volunteer incorrect information or they have the wrong answer in the math course or whatever the case may be. But basically you have the presence, the guidance, acknowledgement, encouragement, and additional information. So for example, the instructor is adding his or her expertise, perhaps reminding the students of a prior chapter or something that they've covered, that the class has covered in the text, perhaps adding a web link and just some additional information and expertise, which we would certainly still encourage in the course, but those are things that we have looked at traditionally in our QA form. So if you look at the next box, the substantive grading, that is something that John, he's alluded to the grading. That is new this fall. That is something that we're adding to the form formally. Now, it may be that chairs have been checking the grading feedback. They've had the ability to do so, but it hasn't been part of any formal evaluation form at CCCOnline, a universal form. It hasn't been part of that. And certainly we on the QA team have not ever looked at grading ourselves. So that's something that's new. And then the last three boxes are the boxes that are outside the course. And those are things, again, that just follow what is already in and has been in the instructor handbook. So you've got the professional development requirement completed. As you know, the professional development, once you're teaching for CCCOnline, you'd be required to complete the managing discussions workshop within the first year, and then thereafter you would have a professional development requirement, one item per year that your chair would approve. And so this form provides a formal space for the chair to keep track of that, basically. So the PD completed for the year. Now the administrative skills, that's really going to be interpreted by each individual chair, but what we've heard from the chairs about that, what they watch for that, is really the same sort of I think, thing that any supervisor would watch for in any kind of, HR-related form, and that is attention to detail, preparedness. Are the courses prepared? Are the instructors answering the chair's emails promptly? Are the courses prepared on time? So attention to detail, collegiality, and communication. So that's something that the chair would perhaps comment on. And then the service to CCCOnline, again, that's going to be up to the chair to fill that part of the form out. But some examples that we've heard from chairs, examples such as helping out with a webinar or a conference, participating in an interview panel, perhaps a conference call on a departmental issue, giving the chair some feedback that he or she asked for on a course, for example. So those categories are up to the chair.
And one quick element I'll add, everyone, in that new category of service to CCCOnline, there is no specific performance expectation. That is simply a category where the chair can make note of whether that instructor has provided any of the types of services to CCCOnline that Liz was just mentioning, so that it can be included in the instructor's overall evaluation of what kind of year they had. But there's no specific performance expectation in that category that an instructor has to provide a certain amount of service to CCCOnline.
Right. I think this form is just a way for the chair to keep track of the accomplishments of the instructor for the year, so those don't get lost in the shuffle. So I think really that's where that request from the chairs came from. It would really be nice to have a form so we can keep track of all our instructors and make sure that we do give them credit for the good work they're doing. Okay, so this next slide just shows you, and based on the last one with the brown boxes and the green. So this is all inside the course, all of these items inside the course, and it just shows you where precisely inside the course a chair is going to be looking to find, for example, the instructor presence. And so, okay, the instructor would show presence, as John was mentioning earlier, since this is something students often speak up and have a concern about. And in fact, it is the #1 concern that our student services staff hears from our students. When our students contact student services, their #1 concern or complaint, if they have a complaint, is that they don't know where their instructors are. They don't feel like the instructor is present enough in their course. They can't, their instructor isn't returning emails, or students feel lost because of the lack of presence. So certainly I think that is pretty universal in online learning, but I think it's interesting that that really bears true with our own students at CCC Online. So presence, so the instructor or the chair would be looking in the class for regular announcements, would be looking in the grade book. There's presence, you can show presence in the grade book, of course, timely grading, timely turnaround, and in the discussions as well, and so on. This is just to give you an idea that the chair really will be in there looking at different parts and pieces of the course to make these determinations about these categories. Okay, and this is a reminder, again, that right now, this fall, John mentioned that he's been filling out the forms and passing them along to chairs for just a few weeks now. So the form very much is still in the pilot stages, and we're going to take feedback that we get from the chairs and the deans and certainly make any tweaks that are necessary to improve what we have right now. But also, it's a note that we plan to have the same rotation of names that we have in the past. That is, if you teach for CCC Online, you will still be getting one of these evaluations every year, so once a year. That's still the plan. Okay, again, establishing presence, and this is just a little reiteration of a slide before. How are you establishing presence in the course? This is where in the course the form is going to look to see the presence. Okay, so you have the discussions, as QA has always looked into discussions and always read the discussions. The discussions, the grade book, the substantive grading, whether the grading, first of all, is it timely and is it substantive, and then also the announcements. Ways to establish presence in the course. I think that's its own slide, just because presence is something that comes up again and again in the literature, and even in my cubicle here at our CCC Online headquarters, I'm pretty close to the student services staff, and I certainly hear that over and over again from them, is that students sometimes call and they're just lost and they don't know where their instructors are. And obviously that's a small minority of our instructors. Most of our instructors are really fantastic at establishing presence, of course, but when that's not the case, it really creates a lot of concern and dismay, I think, on the parts of the students. Okay, so again, we're looking at where in the course the form is going to look to see these various elements. Okay, so the announcements, and this is straight from the new form, Are the announcements meeting the course/departmental expectations? And this, I think, illustrates the fact that, as John mentioned before, the TE team is really stepping back and the chairs are really stepping forward, because each chair may have slightly different expectations in terms of announcements. Okay, so for example, I am teaching English 122 this semester myself, and so my chair, Kyla, has the expectation that we are making announcements at least once a week. And it's pretty open about what we might announce, suggestion would be the upcoming deadlines for the week, of course. But your chair may, may vary in those requirements. And again, this is pertaining to grading, and what you see on the screen here, I'll just leave this up for a moment and let you take a look. This is directly from the TE form. And so again, if you'll just note that this is, again, what is appropriate for the department. And we recognize that grading in a science course on a lab might look different from grading in a philosophy course. So again, that's up to the chair. Again, acknowledgement, as I mentioned earlier, is the same thing that we've been looking for. The QA team has looked for years, and the rubrics, our rubrics reference to add to students' understanding, again, that's completely up to the chairs in terms of what they're looking for there. And with that, I'm going to hand the microphone back over here to John.
And speaking of rubrics, which Liz just mentioned, CCCOnline is moving more and more toward a really mandatory use of rubrics in all courses. Many courses already have them. Some courses that have not been revised in maybe a long time may not have rubrics for every assignment, but as courses get revised and get brought up to date, sort of the master course approach at CCCOnline does include making sure to use and reference rubrics when grading course assignments. And we've mentioned that one of the categories on this new TE form that chairs will be filling out for each instructor is this issue of substantive grading. And the exact content of substantive grading certainly can vary from discipline to discipline, but as a general observation about substantive grading, it would be detailed and specific to the student's performance in that particular assignment. So it would not be just sort of a general comment, you did great work, Susie, keep it up. That's not specific to what the student did in the assignment, and it wouldn't give the student a clear picture of what did I do well, or what did I not do correctly. The chair of your department can be a good reference for you on specific elements of substantive grading in your department, but it definitely would be material that is detailed and specific to what that student did in their paper or their lab project or their discussion. This is just merely one example of substantive grading feedback. You see that it starts off by telling the student where she met certain assignment goals and that it was good to see this success in meeting those goals. It goes on to say, question D of the assignment regarding a comparison of the two cultures was not really addressed, so I was not able to provide those points. Also, the clarity of the writing needed some additional attention, and then a specific example is given, so the student just isn't told, your writing needs more clarity, without any example of something they wrote that is just not clear to the reader. And then at the end, overall, a solid job, and please let me know if you have questions. Again, this is just one example, but you can see that it is specific to what the student did in her particular assignment. As we move to more and more use of rubrics, sometimes these types of specific comments will be included in each one of the rubric boxes. You know how rubrics can be broken down into, 1 to 5 points equals a poor job, 6 to 10 points, passable, 7 points on would be good work, whatever the specific categories are on the particular rubric that gets developed for that assignment. My point being, when formal detailed rubrics are employed in a course, then some of these specific comments, rather than just being a paragraph statement to the student, would be broken down and would appear in the different relevant and appropriate rubric boxes. But it's still achieving the same goal of giving the student specific information about how they did, and not just very general comments, which don't really give the student any guidance about what they did well or what needs more attention.
John, we have a question in the Q&A. Would you like to address that one?
You jump over there.
Sure.
Turn
Actually, I'll go ahead and read that in case any of you can't see it. And the question is, substantive grading. Are the chairs going to look at the Turnitin grade mark comments? That's where I give them the details.
Sure. The chair can look at any element in the course where they ought to be in order to give a valid evaluation of that instructor's performance. And since we are still in just the pilot phase of using this new evaluation method, there could be times when maybe an instructor needs to get back to their chair and say, I just want to make clear that my substantive comments are in the Turnitin form. So that would just be something that would get sorted out, that the chair would understand that's where to look for this particular instructor.
And I would add to that as well. I think that's going to certainly depend on your chair and depend on the department, because I use the grade mark comments. I love that feature. I think it's excellent. And I use that for all the comments to students myself. When I asked my chair about it, my chair said that really it's up to each individual instructor if they choose to use that or not. So again, I would reiterate, you might just communicate with your chair and let your chair know that you are putting your comments in that particular location.
And Eric has a good question about whether substantive comments can include email, and actually they cannot, only because chairs cannot see into your email. Your email is correspondence between you and the student, and chairs can't get into that. So that's why it's important for the really substantive commentary that you're providing to a student to be inside the course where it can be viewed. You certainly can still say the same things if you'd like to the student in an email, but you would not want the email to be the only place where you're providing substantive commentary.
I think something that I have done myself, because my philosophy is I try to keep the announcements pretty brief, and then if I have something more to say, for example, I just graded a batch of papers and I have 3 points that really applied to most of the papers, and I'd like to expound upon that a little bit more so the students know what to improve next time. I would write that in an email, and I would, in the announcement, tell my students prominently, make sure you check your email. Now, I would do this anyway, but especially knowing my chair is going to be looking at the course, and I know my chair can't read my email, I would always remind my students in the announcements to check that email.
And I think the answer to your next question, Eric, would be yes, that anything that is submitted in a Dropbox which gets graded, the chair could be looking at to ensure that the grading feedback is substantive. So just because an assignment is late, if it is still going to be graded, then it could still be something that the chair looks at. And if you have something you want to explain to the chair about how you handle late Dropbox assignments, that would be between you and your chair, and there would not be some rigid overriding CCCOnline policy regarding that. The chairs have a lot more leeway now in doing instructor evaluations which the chair thinks are appropriate for their division, their discipline.
And Maria also has a question, what if you attach a document to the Dropbox feedback area? And I assume you're talking about you've marked up a document and that is your feedback. And I would say that should be legible. Your chair should be able to open that and read it. And so the same thing applies. It might be worth an email to your chair to just let your chair know, by the way, this is how I'm corresponding back to my students, if you don't think that's going to be obvious. So I'm going to go ahead and move the slides along. Thank you for your questions, and feel free to keep those coming.
And since this slide happens to pertain to discussions, let's take a look at Eric's question about discussions. Eric mentions, I frequently have classes where students don't start participating in discussions until a week into the module. Is this concern taken into consideration if I don't respond until a few students reply? A couple of thoughts right there. You still can make your active postings in a discussion when it is still early in the unit and maybe not many students are participating. You can still make your post. And as far as replying, I thought I had my phone off and it went on. As far as replying, even when it's in the first week, if there are student posts that you do want to reply to, then it is best to make your reply within 24 hours. Just so that that particular student feels that engagement, just because they posted early in the unit, you can still, if you think that's a student post that you want to reply to, make your reply within 24 hours. But again, you don't have to reply directly to every student. You can help include everyone by making some posts in every discussion which are addressed to everyone, like, everyone, how is this similar to what we studied about the Kennedy administration? And have a post that asks that, but the very title of the post is clearly addressed to everyone. So I would say if a student does make a post that is significant enough, maybe wrong enough, or very bright in its details that you think you want to respond to, you can make that a goal to make your response within 24 hours.
I think that a related question that we've heard, and I think it's certainly a valid one, is the fear of jumping in too early and overwhelming the students, sort of scaring the students away by perhaps participating too much too early on. And I do think there are ways, it is a fine line. I think there are ways, though, in line with what John was saying, to address that. And one thing you could do, let's say if you have 2 or 3 students who are really eager, and as soon as they can get into that discussion, they post, and then there's some lag time before the rest of them jump in, which is what I'm experiencing right now. I'll make a post just to those early birds, and I'll post collectively to all of them, and maybe use all of their names and say, early birds, thank you for your posts. You know, I look forward to hearing more. And I don't get too vigorously into the discussion too early because I want to see where they take it. But I do want to show presence, and I do want to post. So again, that they know that I heard them and I appreciate, and I'm acknowledging the fact that you know, they're really on top of things, which is something that I like to encourage. So there's some different ways that you can approach that, but definitely, you know, again, the requirements haven't changed in terms of you should be in the course, you should be popping in at least 3 times a week or more. You're answering those direct questions within 24 hours, and as appropriate, you're also in there posting 24 to 48 hours after their post.
And since I always, you know, as an instructor, I want to meet that goal of posting on at least 3 different days per week. If the first week of a discussion is slow, like Eric's question, I'll still go in and post anyway on 3 different days. The first day I might just post a statement saying, this is a very interesting topic that pertains very much to our final paper. Looking forward to all of your comments. 2 days later, I might post, it's awful quiet in here. Don't be shy about making your first post. And then a day after that, I'll go in and make yet a 3rd post in which I might say anything, you know, that is relevant to the discussion. And remember also that when discussions are reviewed, you are not being evaluated on whether students answer your posts. So if I make a post in a course saying, how similar is this issue to what we studied last unit about the New Deal? If no student answers, that's something that can happen sometimes. But I have gone in, I've made a post on that day, and it's a post which is re-engaging. It's asking a question. Whether they answer or get further involved in these posts that I'm making, that's entirely up to the students and is out of your control. As this particular slide says, before we move on to the next one, in the discussions, which are still being reviewed as part of this new TE process, chairs will, in addition to things like substantive grading feedback and turnaround time on grading, chairs will still be looking at discussions, and all of the discussion expectations that you've heard for years are still relevant. The issue of posting on at least 3 different days, with 4 to 5 being even better, making posts that re-engage the students, that you know, ask a question of them, making posts that add further information to the discussion, posts which acknowledge the student, either, you know, saying, great point, Susie, or I need to pass along a slight correction, Bob. You know, this policy did not happen during that era. Whatever the acknowledgement might be. So those discussion expectations that have always been in place at CCCOnline, they're still an important part of your work in discussions. It's just that now this new TE process will look at the other important work you do in those other categories we've been discussing. Here is information directly from this new TE form that we keep talking about. These are the things that chairs will be looking at. Is instructor interaction regular and reach all students, yes or no? For that, the chair, when evaluating the instructor's performance, can be looking at several different things. Interaction within the discussions, posts that are being made in the announcement section, that's interaction with all students. Do instructors' posts praise and encourage students? Again, pretty obvious there. The chair can be looking at responses that are made to students in the discussions, and also grading feedback. Grading feedback can meet this category of praising and encouraging students. Does instructor add further information and content to the course? That can be through various means too. You might make an announcement during one unit in which you tell the students about a particular book that is valuable for further understanding of the topic being studied, or a link to an interesting website that's relevant to that unit's material, or some of the instructor's own experience in that particular field. That could be added in an announcement, helping you meet that one announcement per week goal. It could be postings that an instructor makes in discussions. So, summarizing what we've looked at today, QA, Quality Assurance, is now renamed to Teaching Excellence and is under the Center for Academic Excellence umbrella at CCCOnline. And Teaching Excellence is still the goal of the program, regardless of what the name is. The shift is to chairs having more extensive involvement in making an evaluation of an instructor, and ongoing guidance to instructors from chairs through these new evaluation forms and through professional development, since, as we all know, we are expected to complete at least one professional development activity per year. But stepping back from all of the formal aspects of this new TE form, it really is kind of a simple concept. What this TE process is looking for when the chairs are going to be doing these reviews is simply good, extensive involvement by the instructor in the course, active presence, timely grading, things that so many CCCOnline instructors already are committed to and already do in their work.
I really see, oh, I'm sorry, John.
Oh, I was just going to say, in response to Eric's question, feedback for discussions is something that should be provided to students. If a discussion is worth 10 points, you wouldn't want to just like put 8 points in without some discussion to the students, some grading comments of you met the goal of this and this, but you did not include 2 other cultures as the discussion required, or whatever the situation might be. But since discussions, even though individually they're not worth a lot of points, can add up to a significant impact on a student's final grade, then it's important to give some feedback on how they did on the discussions so they know what to do better or what to continue doing well in all of the subsequent discussions in the course.
And there was one more question that Eric had as well. How do we square 24-hour acknowledgement and minimum of 3 times a week, excluding weekends? Square 24-hour. So 24-hour, you're talking about you're responding to the students within a day. Well, I see there are posts that I think we sort of internally call SOS posts. For example, if you have a water cooler discussion or a ask the professor discussion and your students have a burning question, or if they're emailing you, those things I would say 24 hours. I know, you know, so if it's a question directly to you, like those questions we all get, you know, Professor, I'm lost, I don't understand, where are these directions I'm supposed to follow? And you want to get into that as soon as possible, but in general, presence should be shown in the class. You're popping in 3 times a week, and so I don't see those, you know, I think it's always been our practice in QA, and I know that the chairs will continue to carry on the spirit. We really were not just bean counting and looking for you know, making our little check marks in the calendar. We're also actually reading the posts, and you know, it makes sense to respond to those SOS burning questions as soon as you can. And then some of the other posts where you are trying to encourage the students to interact with each other first, then you might not jump in quite as much. But even if the students are slacking off and they're not participating when they're supposed to be, you can still always be in control and pop in there and post some reminders and additional info 3 times a week. I hope that addresses that.
And it's important to check the discussions every day, because there might be one of those more desperate posts that really should be answered quickly. So you want to be looking at discussions every day. But as far as actually posting in them, 3 different days a week is the basic good expectation. And posting on 4 to 5 different days is an even better presence. So you want to check discussions every day just to be sure whether there are really pressing comments that a student has made or asked a question that does need a quick response.
Exactly. There's another question here from Eric. Has the number of professional development activities per year changed to twice a year? Is it still once a year? The policy, professional development policy in the instructor handbook has not changed recently, and so after CCCOnline instructors are hired, they're expected to complete the particular workshop managing discussions within the first year of hire, but then after that, they would be required to have the 1 PD activity per year. Any other questions?
You won't see this new teaching excellence form that we keep talking about until it's time for your regular annual review. So if you have always gotten your review in the spring of each year, then you won't see a specific TE form and evaluation for you until spring of 15. And once you do get your first one, remember, we're still feeling our way here. It's a new process. You might have questions for your chair, which are perfectly fine to follow up with your chair on that type of thing. You know, it will be the first time you're getting a evaluation under this new process that's looking at more things. And we may experience some changes in the form as we move along through this first fall of 14 pilot.
And actually, John brings up another good point, and that is that you are used to, I think, looking at your QA forms in the portal. They're available to you in the portal once your chair releases them to you. And right now we are, since it's a pilot, we're working off spreadsheets and email for the time being. Of course, we will eventually make some changes in the middleware and put the new form into a place where you'll be able to eventually access those through the portal. But that's not something that's happening right away because, of course, this fall is the pilot, and then we're going to, I'm sure, make some changes and tweaks. So this will be a process that's going to stretch out over a bit of time. So again, if you have any questions about what your particular form includes and or whether you have been evaluated for this fall, because I'm sure, you know, with 18 people, there may be a percentage of you who are on the TE list for the fall, and the others would be on spring or summer. So if you have any questions about that, your chair is really the one, is really your reference.
And the way that a chair shares or the evaluation with their instructors could vary from chair to chair. Some chairs might prefer to do an in-person meeting or a phone meeting where you both are looking at the evaluation form. Other chairs might just email it to the instructor with a cover message about, you know, here's your evaluation for this year. And so it could even vary from chair to chair as to exactly how they present the evaluation to you.
Well, it is 2:05 right now. We've gone, our time was, we've scheduled this until 2:30 in case there were more questions, and certainly we will wait around here for just a little bit and see if there are more questions. Please feel free to type those in the Q&A. Otherwise, I would like to thank you very much for coming today and for your attention and participation and your good questions. And I think overall, I'm excited about this new form. I think it's a change in a really positive direction for a number of reasons, which John has discussed, but basically the bottom line, I think we're acknowledging your work in areas other than only the discussions. We realize that good teaching involves presence in those discussions is, I think, critical, but you're doing good work in other areas as well. So we hope that this really acknowledges the good work you've already done, and we also hope that this strengthens your relationship, your professional relationships with your program chairs as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Liz and John, for taking the time to share that information with us. Yeah, like they said, feel free to put in questions as you think of them. You can continue to use that Q&A panel, or you can raise your hand if you want to try using your microphone as well. You're welcome to hit the hand raise icon and we can pass you the microphone. But yeah, otherwise, I'd like to say thank you also for taking the time to come and share this presentation with us, everyone. And if you have any other questions, I'm sure that they'd be happy to answer those questions about that process for you if you'd like to email them.